Hi, I'm YK. Working in Japan's business landscape, I casually share what I've seen and feeling, especially around culture and communication. Today's theme: why do Japanese people stay silent in meetings? And does it really mean they agree? You've probably been there. You are in a meeting with a Japanese team, you ask a question, and silence. No pushback, no comments, just silence. And if you are not used to it, it can feel awkward or even frustrating. Over the years, I've heard many global professionals say things like, "Why didn't anyone ask questions? Was that silence a yes or no?" And that made me realize that silence itself is being misunderstood. Not just because it's quiet, but because it communicates differently. So today, let's unpack that silence to understand why it happens, what it can really mean, and how we can all communicate a little better when working across cultures. Let's start with the meeting itself and how its purpose differs across cultures. In many Western companies, meetings are where people brainstorm, debate, and decide, often on the spot. But in Japan, meetings often play a very different role. They are more about reporting progress, confirming alignment, and formalizing decisions that were already made behind the scene. In fact, a joint study by the EU-Japan Center for Industrial Cooperation highlights how Japanese meetings often serve to formalize and confirm decisions that were already discussed informally beforehand. Rather than being a place for debate, they often function more like a structured endorsement of prior alignment. So when nobody speaks up during the meeting, it might not be because they agree. It might be because the real discussion already happened elsewhere. In that context, disagreeing at the meeting could feel too late or even inappropriate. So why is this silence so often misunderstood? In Western cultures like the US, Germany, Australia, or the Netherlands, meetings are typically low context. Communication is direct, verbal, and explicit. But Japan is a high-context culture. That means people rely more on shared understanding, non-verbal cues, and reading the room. In these settings, silence doesn't mean nothing is happening. It might mean, "I'm being thoughtful, I have concerns, but I don't want to disrupt the harmony," or simply, "I'm waiting for my manager to speak first." Meanwhile, to someone from a low-context culture, silence might look like, "No one objects, so let's move forward." That's where misalignment starts. And just to be clear, not all Japanese workplaces are like this. Things are changing, especially in tech firms or multinational offices in Japan. But this cultural undercurrent still exists. And if you are not aware of it, you'll miss what's not being said. So, what's actually behind this silence? Let's break it down into a few key reasons. First, language confidence. According to the 2023 EF English Proficiency Index, Japan ranks 87th out of 113 countries, lower than many of its Asian neighbors. But more than that, there's a cultural fear of making mistakes, especially publicly and especially in English. People worry, what if I sound unprofessional? Will I embarrass myself or worse, my boss? Second, hierarchy and formality. In Japan, speaking up before your manager or contradicting them can feel risky. It's not just respect, it's self-preservation. According to Hofstede's Cultural Dimensions, Japan scores high on power distance. This means the gap between leaders and staff is relatively wide, and that shapes how freely people talk in group settings. Third, the nemawashi culture. Nemawashi is an informal pre-meeting where people align in advance. By the time the real meeting happens, voicing objection can feel like breaking the unspoken agreement. So silence doesn't mean passivity. It might actually mean everything's already been said, just not in front of you. Now that we've covered the meeting itself, let's talk about where real opinions are actually shared. Slack, one-on-ones, after-work drinks, private hallway chats. A Japanese colleague once joked, "If you want to get promoted, take up smoking." That's where the real conversations happen. And while that's mostly a joke, not exactly the best health advice, it actually points to something real. In Japan, people often save honest feedback for more personal, lower stakes settings. So what seems like silence in the meeting might just be a delayed conversation. You might hear something like, "Actually, I've been thinking, I'm not sure about that plan." That's not a contradiction. It's just that the real answer comes later. So, what can you actually do when working with Japanese professionals? Here are 5 things that tend to work well. 1. Support bilingual communication. Even just a summary in Japanese can open the door for more voices. 2. Share materials in advance. This gives people time to prepare their thoughts and builds confidence. 3. Ask specific people for input. Instead of, "Any thoughts? Try, Nakata-san, what's your take?" 4. Leave room for silence. Don't rush to fill the pause. Silence can mean someone's still processing. 5. Follow up privately. You might get a real feedback in a one-on-one later, and that's okay. Here's one real example. In a global project, a manager ran a meeting and got no objection from the Japanese team. He thought, "Great, everyone agrees." But after the call, he got several messages. "Actually, I'm not sure this is the best direction." That wasn't sabotage. That was a moment when feedback finally felt safe. So, before we wrap up, let me ask you this. Have you ever found yourself confused by silence in a meeting? Like, was that a yes, a no, or just nothing? Or maybe you assumed silence meant agreement, only to find out later that people actually disagreed. Have you ever held back your own thoughts because the timing didn't feel right? If so, you are not wrong. I'd love to hear your story. Drop a comment and let's talk. Thanks for watching, and let's keep exploring these cross-cultural moments together.